There should be no minimum age to vote. Every citizen, every permanent resident for that matter, who wants to vote should be allowed to.
This is by far probably one of the most brain dead takes I've ever heard when it comes to the voting age argument. And me personally, I actually think it should be raised. But let's hear what he has to say. Let's break it down. He may have some good points. I doubt it, but let's take a listen.
Children already work, pay taxes, can be found criminally liable for their actions. They can procreate.
I'm going to break each of those down individually. They work and pay taxes. A lot of times that's out of necessity. The family's doing bad. It's not like this is something that's actually super common, right? Most children do not work. And even if they do, they need permission from their parents and a whole bunch of other things. Them procreating is not a good argument for people being able to vote. Like, just because you can procreate, that means you should be allowed to vote. No. Fun fact, especially here in the state of California, minors cannot legally consent to sex, even to each other. So whenever minors engage in sexual activity, it's considered statutory, So yeah, minors have no right to consent to anything. So just because they can procreate doesn't mean that they can vote. Puberty doesn't give you the right to vote. And then this whole thing of they could be seen as adults, like tried as adults when they commit a crime, that's because you're supposed to know right from wrong by a certain age. You don't have to understand complex things to know that you probably shouldn't stab somebody up about 9 times. You don't have to be too informed to understand that. However, you have to be very informed on like foreign relations and policy if you're going to vote on things like what's going on in the White House. Being tried as an adult means that you're being tried on your ability to know right from wrong when it comes to committing crimes. It has nothing to do with understanding complex policies.
They are active contributors to the community, to the family. Sometimes they're the primary caregiver in the family.
Another terrible example. They're the primary caregivers a lot of times out of necessity. The family's not doing too well. Most of the times, these parents would much prefer their kids to just be in school. And they're not the primary caregivers. They're the primary babysitters. You got to understand that. They're the primary babysitters so that their parents can work maybe an extra job or a third job because they're not doing too well financially. That is still not a good argument for why you think they should vote. Just because they have responsibilities doesn't mean they can vote. Having responsibilities is just a fact of life. Some people have more responsibilities than others. That doesn't mean that they're educated enough to understand what happens in politics.
And every argument that can be made against lowering the voting age can also be applied to somebody who's currently able to vote. A 14-year-old's brain isn't fully developed. Well, neither is a 21-year-old.
Although that may be true, a 21-year-old's brain is still way more developed than a 14-year-old. 21-year-old is reaching mental maturity, whereas a 14-year-old is still going through puberty. It really shouldn't be that difficult to understand this. This is just someone who wants to say the most extreme things he could possibly think of and back it up with something that doesn't really have any standing, because there's no reason that you could compare a 14-year-old's critical thinking skills to a 21-year-old's. It's just not even the same.
Their vote can be easily influenced by family members. That is literally an argument that was made against giving women the vote in the 1910s.
Now, where I will agree with you a little bit is that was used against women. All the men are going to just control who they vote for and things of that nature. That being said, children way more impressionable than grown women. A lot of grown women are not going to allow themselves to have their votes just suppressed by their husbands. But you know what's actually interesting is that a lot of women do just vote the way that their man votes because of religious beliefs. They believe that a house should be one, a house should be a union. So you should not have a house divided, especially not politically, because typically speaking, a lot of times your political views should be aligned with your moral views and your ethical views and things of that nature. So there are a lot of instances where women's votes are actually influenced by their husbands. It's 100% true. That being said, children are way more impressionable. I'd be surprised if those ballots even got to the kids. The parents would just fill it out for them and mail it out. I've heard that happening to even like grown children in people's houses. I'm talking 25, 26, 27 years old, where the parents will take their ballots and say, you're living under my house, so you're going to vote the way I vote. Fill out the ballots and send them out because you don't have to go in, show your ID and vote anymore. People are just mailing in other people's ballots. It's a real thing. So if you don't think that children's votes are going to be influenced by the parents, then you, my friend, are a moron.
They lack the literacy skills to be able to vote. I got news for you. About 10% of adults lack those skills too.
That is such a brain dead argument. I don't even know where to begin. And also, sir, I don't know if you're keeping up with the times, but the literacy rate for children has reached an all-time low. Kids are not even being taught phonics in a lot of places. They're just being taught sight reading. So they don't know how to use context clues. They don't know how to sound out words. They don't know how to do a lot of different things. So to think that a 15, 14, 13, or 12-year-old should have the ability to vote, I think is highly irresponsible. And using the fact that there are adults with literacy issues as justification to let children with literacy issues vote is ridiculous.
They'll vote irresponsibly or even selfishly? I mean, nobody has a greater stake in the future of this country than kids. They deserve to have a say.
Just because children have a stake in the future doesn't mean that they have the right to vote at their current age. Take, for example, you go on an airplane. Everybody paid their fair share. That doesn't mean that everybody gets a say in how this plane is ran. If you're on a ship, not everybody gets to have a say on how the ship is operated, including the employees. So the people that paid their fair share to get on the boat don't necessarily have a say in how this boat is ran. Take even the workplace, where everybody puts in their 40 hours a week. Some people put in a little bit more, maybe some put in a little bit less. And you are vested into this company. That does not mean you get a vote into where the direction of this company is going. You are part of the machine, but you are not part of the thinking process of this machine. You are a cog. Now, from being a cog, you can work your way up until you get into a decision-making role, but for the most part, this is not your role. I know this may sound backwards, but just because you have a vested interest in something doesn't mean you are necessarily in a decision-making role for that thing. Now I'm going to give my controversial take. I think that the voting age should be raised to maybe 25 years old. That's just me. I feel like if you look at what an 18-year-old is now compared to like an 18-year-old in the 70s when they first put this as part of the Constitution, you will see a difference in maturity levels of an 18-year-old now compared to an 18-year-old then. It's totally different, and we have to adjust with the times. That being said, I don't think that amendment should have ever even been put into the Constitution. Realistically speaking, each state should have been able to set their own voting age according to what the Constitution says. But saying that you should lower it from 18 to whatever the hell age people are is crazy. Saying that 12-year-olds should have the right to vote, crazy. Now, I said 25 years old. People are going to hit me with well, they can go to the military and die at 18, so why can't they vote at 18? I went to the military, so I'll tell you this. If people are in the military, then they should have a right to vote. They have a very, very vested interest in who's the president because they may decide if they live or die. If you join the military, go ahead and vote, or do something like Vivek Ramaswamy said, where he said they should pass some kind of civics test to understand what they're voting on if they want to vote at the age of 18. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that everybody should pass a test before voting. That's my controversial take. Nothing crazy. 20-question true or false test where it's like candidate A believes in da-da-da-da-da-da, true or false. Candidate B believes in da-da-da-da-da, true or false. Something very simple that's written at an 8th grade reading level. That way nobody can claim that the literacy level is too high. Plain English. Does this candidate believe in this? Yes or no? Does this candidate want to pass this? Yes or no? 20 questions. And if you can pass that with at least an 80% clip, then you should be allowed to vote. But having uninformed voters is not a good thing. There's actually a saying out there that says the uninformed voter is your target because the informed voter already knows which way they're going to go. Uninformed voter can be swayed with emotion, with propaganda, with things of that nature. And I do not believe that voting is a place for 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8-year-olds. Saying that there should be no voting age period is absolutely irresponsible, completely asinine, and you, my friend, are a moron. Be easy.